So good morning, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with the first pre meetup of 2022. And we are joined by Maja Falkenberg and Emilie Gregers Zimino, and they will share how they work with, have built and work with user panel at TV2 and YouSee. I'm Tina Øvel, and I will be your host this morning. And as you might have heard us be saying, that we can see that the numbers are rising very fast. So we are very happy that so many people have decided to join us online. And I hope that you've had a lovely morning so far. And good morning to you guys as well. It's nice that you're here and that you're up for giving a talk about the user panels. So Maja is a UX lead at TV2 Play and specialized in user research and design thinking. And Emilie is commercial manager with a strong focus on customer experience at YouSee. And the agenda for today is that when I'm done with all these practicalities, Maja and Emilie will start their talk. You can ask questions in the QA section here in Zoom, and we will go through some of them at the end of the session. This time, you've also had the opportunity of asking questions before the talk, and I know that Maja and Emilie have included some of them in their presentation today. We are recording everything, and we will share the recording during the next week, together with Maja and Emilie's slides as well. And then I want to use this opportunity to tell you some news from Preely. So a lot of stuff is happening at our end, and we are actually releasing a major update to our user panel next week, giving even more freedom and features to support our customers in building and hosting user panels. So if you're interested in hearing more after you have been inspired by Maja and Emilie, please reach out and then we'll see what we can do for you. We will make sure to include contact information in the mail with all the material. And I think that was all I had in my notes. So I think take it away, Maja and Emilie, and then we will. I'll let you know when the time is almost up.
All right.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Greetings from Odense. Yeah. So my name is Emilie, as Tina said, and this is Maja, and we are here together to give you a hands-on talk about building and working with the user panels at our respective companies. I work with YouSee and Maja works with TV2. This is us, no need to further introduce ourselves. I think I speak on behalf of both of us when I say that we are a bit nervous, but also super excited about doing this talk and being invited to this meetup about a topic that we both find very, very interesting and are quite passionate about. So this is just some of the topics that we will touch upon today. So why do we work with a user panel? How do we do it? And what value does it actually provide us? And not necessarily just us, but also the businesses that we work for. So as Tina also said, we prior to this meetup asked for some questions that you guys would like to have answered. And we did that from our LinkedIn posts. So this is just some of them. And as Tina also said, that we will be touching upon most of them, I think. If there are any of them that we don't touch upon, please just in the Q&A session afterwards, just ask us. We're more than happy to share whatever we have to say and answer your questions. So just to be clear, I know that Maja and I are sitting here now, but this is managing and building user panels is not a one-woman job. We have together with these fantastic colleagues done a huge amount of work. So a huge kudos to them as well. Maja will talk a bit about it as well, but we have both formed like a community and a team around the use of a user panel, and that's definitely also something that I think will shine quite bright through today. That it's definitely also what we recommend, and also just to be clear, it's not like we have reinvented the wheel or anything. There is a lot of other companies and brands that work with user panels too. And I just think that we think it's awesome that so many have taken this way of recruiting and talking and getting customer feedback into their way of working. So just a huge kudos to them as well. So this is our panels. So The talk we are doing today is, of course, both reflecting TV2 and YouSee. We have more than 1,000 panelists in each of our panels. As you can see, there is it's a different split between men and women in our panels. But what is really, really important here is that our panels, and what we really have been focusing on, is, of course, that our panels should reflect the reality. So we really use a lot of time and also have a lot of emphasis on that our customer panels should reflect our customer base. Yeah, and as you can see, customer panels serve different purposes and different products and services. So in YouSee, we also are in 1.6 million households throughout the entire country. That's to me, at least, I think, and also I know a lot of my colleagues think that too, that's a huge commitment. That also requires, especially for us, to be very focused around building our products and services towards meeting the needs of our customers. But we have different apps. Some of them you might know if you have YouSee at home. And then, of course, we also have different products. So we have TV, internet, mobile, and broadband. And the same naturally also goes for TV2. At least I know that I have most of those TV2 products on my devices. Yeah, of course, also the TV2 panel also is used for testing and prototypes and all that for research towards TV2.dk. And yeah, as I said before, it's important to us that our user panels actually reflect the reality. It would be super weird if the panel in YouSee perhaps were super focused around young people in the age of 18 to 35, because I can be honest here that that's not the user group and the base that we have in YouSee. So yeah, you can see the average age in our panel is 55, and an average customer in YouSee is around 50 plus. On mobile, it's a bit higher. And then also, as you can see, that we have a 70 split on men and 30% on females, and that's definitely not ideal right now. We have quite a lot overrepresentation of men, which actually is a bit fun. Mm-hmm. And also on TV2, for example, on the Play product, it's a 50-50% split. So that's a bit more accurate than that we have in YouSee. Also, we got a question towards the recommendation of size of a panel, and I really don't think that there is one like good answer to this. I think it's important to say, as I said before, we are in 1.6 million households, so naturally having a panel at more than 1,000 could be higher. But it's also, I think, based, and I know that you, Maja, will also talk about it, but it's also about reflecting, so how many people should and are working with the panel. So in YouSee, we are about 30 across UX research, UI, and UX design. And we are also some commercial managers working with this. So that's, of course, a lot of people who use the panel. And that also has a reflection on the size of the panel that you need. But it can reflect a lot. So I don't think there is one answer to this. It's very based on the company and the brand that you work for. Yeah, and so, I mean, I can definitely say on behalf of both of us that we have a very strong focus on the existing customer and user in the companies that we work for. And therefore, we have also both decided that the panels that we have reflect this. So our panels are built upon the core around existing customers, not saying that focusing on potential new customers and new segments in the companies that we work for is not important. But I think it's also an emphasis towards saying that having a strong focus on the existing customer also has a really strong focus point. So we will touch a bit upon talking about the next steps that we have, and I can definitely share that looking towards new segments and new customers is of course a priority. Yes, so the challenge that both Maja and I were facing together with our colleagues was that how can we get in touch with our customers in a frictionless, easy and affordable way? Right now, it's recruitment takes a lot of time. I work in a quite process heavy and old school company, and that definitely doesn't make recruitment easier. So that's also why we think that working with user panels is very, very valuable to us. And just some of the benefits as we see them. I mean, in order to do proper research, you also need to find and recruit the right customers in order to get the feedback and get your hypothesis answered in order to get the results that you need. Also, as I said before, working in a process heavy is really, really time consuming, working in an environment like that. So we've also seen it a bit like hacking the time consuming recruitment process by applying a user panel to the way we recruit. And also we both believe that it's really money well spent. Being able to take from a pile of customers who have actually opted in to help you is really nice. But also just looking towards the cost that it can be to use an external user panel and getting others to recruit for you, that can be quite expensive, I can tell you. And also what is really, really cool about applying a user panel to the way you recruit is that it also supports a variety of needs and different methods, depending if you are a commercial manager like me, if you are a UX designer like Maja. It has a really strong focus point on and adding that variety and being able to apply your user panel to many ways of doing research. We've also both Maja and I are really, really agreeing on this, that it shouldn't be, and we don't work with that either, that our user panel is like the one source to rule them all when it comes to recruitment. We definitely also use other channels and other ways of recruiting as well. I know that you guys at TV2 have been working a lot also with external partners. We have done that a bit in YouSee, but most we have been using the internal channels, and I can tell you that is something that will give you gray hair before it's you should get that. And also, of course, the benefit of that, yeah, perhaps it's really, really time consuming, but then the cost is really, really low, and that of course can also be a super good thing. But it all depends. I think just it's to be clear here that just because you add a user panel to the way that you recruit doesn't mean that that should be the one way to go all the time. In YouSee, for example, we have very, very specific customer cases, research cases where we need to be very specific around. So if a customer has within the last 3 months bought a TV box or has gotten a new equipment, and that's on a specific technology, because as you know, perhaps internet runs on different technologies depending on what cable you have or where you live in Denmark. So that's where the user panel is not really perhaps the best way to go. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so as Emilie mentioned to begin with, we really wanted to do this talk to give you guys a hands-on on our experience in establishing and running a user panel. And I mean, hopefully you will be inspired to use some of these insights that we've gotten, and also maybe shortcut some of the detours that we've been on, because even though I think it's actually quite simple to establish a user panel, there's tons amounts of question that pops up all the time. And we sort of we try to constrain all these questions into different areas that hopefully can benefit as some sort of guidelines for you guys. But again, it's also to tell you about what our own experiences is. Yeah, so a lot of questions pops up, and you really did work on the gifts. I love it.
Be like Simon Cowell. Yeah, why?
Yeah, exactly. So a really important question to begin with is of course why. Why do you need a user panel? What do you need it for? Who is going to use it? How often are you going to use it? So important question to begin with. And also just a short reminder that a user panel is of course not the end goal. It's a great methods for doing better user research, which is the sort of the reason why you should do it. So we centered all these different questions and areas that we found to be interesting for you guys in 6 different areas. And these 6 different areas about, the first one is about what research methods your panel should support. Then it's about what data you need on the customers joining your panel, what platform you need to choose or can choose, how you can recruit customers to your panel, and what to do about them when they sign up. And then lastly, how can you create a governance around your panel to sort of create some structures that can give you some better rules around your panel. So the first one, what research methods should your user panel support? We gathered the different the research method that we both in TV2 and YouSee are working with in terms of our panel. So on one hand, we have these unmoderated tests and surveys. So for example, we send out a pre-lead test to a group of customers in our panel, where we test design or user flows or ask different questions and get feedback right away. And so we never talked to the actual person. So that is one way we are using the panel. Then we are also doing invitation for joining an interview on the phone, or doing a remote moderated test where we actually get in touch with our customers. And then lastly, we also do in-person interviews, like physical in the real world, where we do focus groups and user tests and so forth. So our panel today for the both of our companies sort of serve a bigger variety of different methods. And of course, for those different methods, we also need different templates for when we send out an invitation or we send out a test. Of course, it cannot be the same wording or questions that we ask. So we also have different templates from that, which I'll get into a little bit further. And then lastly, to be able to sort of send our tests to our panels, of course, we need to figure out what data do we need on them. So yeah, we just again took examples of the data that we collect on our customers when they sign up to the panel. And I mean, it's if I want to do an in-person interview, I need to be able to segment and filter on where people are living, because I want to get in touch with people in my area. Or if I want to have a user test around a specific product, and I want to talk to customers, I need to know that they actually have that product. So again, it's up to you what kind of data you need on your customers, but definitely something you need to take into consideration. And I also know that in YouSee you added phone, the person's phone number, because you actually wanted to get in touch with that.
Because we really found that depending on what competency you have and what role you have had in YouSee, it was very different what methods you were applying. And to begin with, we didn't recruit also based on a customer phone number, for example, just adding that as a basic info. And that was something that we had then to iterate and then figure out. But I mean, naturally, you don't get it whole in one from the first time. It's an iterative process. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and then again, you also need to, of course, restrain yourself and not just ask like
too many
questions, because then maybe your recruitment process for signing up can be so long that the customer drops out. And also one last point about these data points, at least how we collect them, is of course that we rely on the customers telling us how old or what gender or what devices they have. And so there is a risk of that information, of course, not being true. I know that you and YouSee have experienced like people are lying about their age.
Yeah.
So again, and again, I think it's just something you need to take into consideration. Yeah. So thirdly, you also need to think about what platform you want to use for your user panel. And I mean, it's not a secret that TV2 and YouSee are using Preely, and we, but I mean, that's one platform to use. And the reason why we are using it, because it simply gives us some easy access to users and sort of downsize our workflows, because it has a lot of different built-in functionalities that we appreciate very much. Yeah. But I mean, I've also seen examples of user panels on Facebook. For example, I know that MobilePay has a panel on Facebook where they recruit, so that's also a way to do it. And then I've also seen like very simple user panel in an Excel sheet saying, so you gathered a group of people that you can easily get in touch with. And again, it really relies on how many are you using, how much functionality do you need, and so forth. So again, there's a lot of different platforms.
I think also like a really, at least what we have been talking a lot about in the team that we have structured in YouSee is that working with Preely, also it's a Danish platform. And what is really, really cool is that the feedback, and we've also been talking about it, that the feedback that we have is taken super seriously. And we sometimes see that some of the feedback that we give is almost implemented in the next sprint that they are working with. And that's to us really, really valuable, on contrary to working with an external partner in the US, for example. You don't have the same impact on the service and product that you have with Preely, and that's super cool.
Yeah, I agree. So now you sort of decided what platform you need. Now you also need to recruit your customers. And we've taken some examples that YouSee has been using in terms of recruiting customers to their panel. And I want to highlight that there is a variety of different channels that you can use. And I would really recommend you guys to not only just use one channel, but think about where can you get in touch with users or customers, where is biggest amount of them, where they at. And I think a very funny example from YouSee is that they use their own TV platform so the customer would turn on their TV and click through channels, and then one channel would say, hey, do you want to join our user panel? Sign up here. So I think that's a great example of how you can also use your own product to sort of recruit. And I know that you guys also had great success with using newsletters for recruitment. In TV2, we had great success with using our platform TV2.dk, which has a huge amount of traffic. So it was really great to see how many people were interested in joining our panel from there. And I know that both of us has also tried Facebook ads, which definitely is recommendable, but it can also be a bit expensive if you're not like, because it is an ad, and ads has to also something you're against ads, and maybe you won't sign up from here. So this is just some different examples of where you can recruit from, and really, again, you need to figure out where are my users, or where are the customers that I want to take into my panel.
Also being very realistic about trying stuff out. I mean, I can also share that we are also working with the NPS scores in YouSee, and we are sending out a huge amount of text messages to our customers. We thought it was a super good idea to implement in an NPS survey SMS to the customers about if they wanted to be part of our panel, and that was not our most successful way of recruiting. I think we are sending out to about 1,000 customers. I don't know if it's a week or a day, but it's a lot. And I think we got 2 signups
so
the first week.
So it wasn't the perfect fit for you.
Not really. And also on Facebook ads, I think we spent around 5,000 on an ad, and I think we ended up paying about 150 per sign up. So that was definitely also expensive, but it also depends on the different target groups that you try to get in.
Yeah. So again, try different channels. I also take an example of how the sort of the customer journey can be for signing up for the TV2 user panel. Again, we have different channels that we recruit from, but we started out on a Facebook ad. So when people saw that post on Facebook, they could click further to a landing page, almost similar to actually a landing page on TV2DK. And we found out that it was important to sort of have a landing page on your own website, because it raises trust around that this is not clickbait, or this is not some scam or so whatever. So then the customers could go directly to Preli's sign up page, where they were asked different questions that we wanted to again get data on the actual customer, and boom, they were in our panel. And this is just a screenshot of how our panel looks today. So you can see there's also on the left side, there's different filters, so we can segment the customers when we send out invitation and test. That is valuable for us, at least. And then we also try to, as quick as possible, actually send out the first test when people sign up, so they will hear from us to begin with, and then when they finish that test, we'll get in the first results. So this is an example of the sort of the journey for users signing up at TV2. Yeah. So what happens when they sign up in to your user panel? There is, you could say, there's a whole lifetime circle around being a part of a user panel. So you need to figure out, how are we onboarding new customers? Should we speak in a specific manner way to them? How are we sending out test or invitation? How often are we reaching out? What are we doing with inactive customers? That has been a problem for us, at least in TV2, where we could see that a lot of people were signing up, but they weren't really participating in any of the tests that we send out. So we have formed a whole task around figuring out how can we actually activate them. And again, like if you establish a user panel, you can recruit people for the panel and just let them be. But I would highly recommend you to sort of keep an eye on how is the performance, how is you could almost say get health check, make a health check on your panel, making sure that people are getting in, reached out to, and what are the different bounce rates on the different tests you're sending out. Yeah, so we are at the last area, and it's a question about, do you need a governance around structure around your panel? And Joey says yes. And because we found that it was really important to take into consideration how you can work with creating structures and rules around your panel, so it's much easier to use, and it's also more professional reaching out to your customers. Yeah. And first of all, we would really argue that creating a team, as you also mentioned, around the panel, it can be like a guild or a super user group. Exciting. So just making sure that you're not working on your own on this panel, but having the colleagues to discuss different aspects of the user panel, but also the different tasks that are popping up, and then create some sort of what can you say, templates, or to secure what quality you have when you send out test or invitation to your customers. And we also in TV2, we did some how-to guidelines for our colleagues to use, so they would hopefully get get to use the user panel in a quicker way. So yeah, so it's also, it both has to do with supporting the colleagues that are using the panel, but also making sure that whatever we send out to our customers actually have a coherence between it.
Yeah, and also a quality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we also found that we needed to create rules about using the panel. For example, how frequent can you send out tests? How many can you send out to? What is the right number? We're still experimenting on that. And then also a really important question, what about reward? Do you want a reward-free panel, or do you actually want to give your customers some sort of gift whenever they've ended a test or been part of an interview? Again, that's up to you, and I guess that's also depending on what kind of business you're in. The last point is, I think, boring but very important. Super important to align with your legal and finance department to ensure the whole GDPR compliance around your panel. So you need that, you know that part is okay. Yeah. So that was the 6 areas, and we just wanted to finish up with sort of, I don't know what to call it,
the bias,
the dark side of user research. But it's something that we, both of us, have met quite often questions about, is that how can we actually make sure that we minimize biases around our user panel. And I would say you could take it up to a higher level, because it's really to do about how can you minimize bias in your user research, because that is a really important question to think of when you do user research. How can you make sure that the people you're interviewing or testing or talking to are the right person, that they are answering your question in the right way, and so forth. But biases is actually also to do with yourself. Like, how can you make sure that you're not totally biased yourself when you go into doing user research? I mean, there's no easy way to sort of make sure that this is not happening, but I think the acknowledgement of it is one way to go through it. Yeah. And also a really important thing, I guess, that's is to make sure that your findings from your user research is sort of combined with other data sources, so you heighten up your quality of the work that you're doing. And I would actually say, like, so this is the backside of doing a user panel, and I think, of course, I understand people being critical towards having a user panel. I experienced that as well, but I would also say the even bigger risk is actually not to do any research. So I would say that's even a bigger mistake. Yeah, if definitely. You're so afraid of the biases, or afraid of what if I am talking to a super user that is just on telling me the right thing, but if you're not doing user test, then you're only building products based on your own gut feeling, and that's even worse.
Definitely. Yeah. I also think, you already said it, but just acknowledging that it's there is accepting it. That was a tough word. Yeah. And also, I mean, we all have biases, no matter what role we have, if it's personal bias or if it's bias towards a product or service or brand. We need to be aware of it, and that's a huge part of our job as researchers or commercial managers, or whatever role we have in the companies that we work for. And it should definitely not be the barrier towards not doing research at all. And that's also where, as Maja also said, triangulation of data, making sure that you keep evaluating your hypothesis, you do a thorough research plan. If you do your work up until the research that you're doing, making sure that you actually have a plan and you know what hypothesis you wanna prove or disprove, then you actually are quite a good way to go. And I also know that, I mean, it's not all who have, and in a lot of companies, you are a one woman or man army, but then you can reach out in your network, having an old study buddy or an old colleague or anyone, if you are in a network, having them also to reevaluate your findings and really try to get feedback in that way. That's also a really key focus point here.
Yeah, and again, back to the template that you showed before, just remembering that a user panel, I really love working with with our user panel, but it should not be the only way of recruiting, for example.
No.
Let's continue to the last part.
Yeah. So we in YouSee this summer 2021 we had been through some ups and downs working with the panel, and we had some members coming in, some members going, and we were in the group thinking, so let's reboot ourselves and reboot the panel and saying, okay, so let's actually figure out, why do the customers even sign up to being a part of our panel? Are they only there for the gift card, or do they actually even want to be there? We had, as Maja also said, we have quite a huge pile of customers who are inactive. So how come? So we were curious, and we asked them. So my colleague Julie and some of the others in our user group, we did a survey sending out to the customers in our panel, and we were, of course, there were some that were there for the gift cards, and by all means they are more than welcome to be there. That's also some of the things you also need to understand when you work with customers and get customer feedback in general. There are people who are there for the money, and that's fair enough. But the primary reasons for them to be there was to be able to share their experiences with us in YouSee and influence their own products, to be involved in co-creation and actively contribute to the product development. I mean, we are in so many Danish households. If the customers weren't there in order to want to contribute to the products that they have, then I don't know where we would be. So and then also we also used the panel a lot in order to be able to develop new products to our existing customers, iterating constantly. There is, just on the TV market, there is a lot of stuff going on. We all talk about streaming service and a declining TV market, but we also have a huge, strong base around a really supportive customers who really love our TV products. So we really thought it was super cool that a lot of them wanted to be like the first mover and test out new products that we were offering, and we also used the panel for that. So that's super cool. And some of the quotes, I mean, just that they can influence our website, that it's manageable and anything but time consuming. I mean, some of the methods, especially also if you send out a remote usability test throughout Preely and you use the panel, I mean, the customer can basically sit in their sofa or lie in their bed. They can be everywhere and take the test. So that's also what makes it anything but time consuming, and they can do it whenever and wherever they want. And also we thought it was super cool that the customers, they felt like they could speak their mind, both in terms of the good and the bad. So that's also just to say that of course, just being aware of the customers you have and also really serve them. We talk a lot about in my team about providing customers something back. When we ask for feedback from them, we should also provide something back in terms of also why, as Maja was, the customer's input is so important. Yes. So our next steps with working with our users, as you saw, we need a new recruitment plan. We have to equalize the gender gap. I don't know what happened, but apparently a lot of men want to be part of our panel. that's great. But we need to have that more reflected in when we send out tests, and so when we use the user panel, that it needs to be equal to the split we have in our customer base in general, and that's more than a 50-50% split. So that's also something we need to be aware of when we use the panel and send out tests. So we need to have an equal amount of women and men sent out to. And then also we have been through quite a huge organizational change, meaning that we've also had some colleagues leaving and then having to onboard new. So we also need to like reactivate the whole thought around, remember that we have a user panel. This is awesome. So just like doing some branding of the panel as well. And then also that we have done some activation of new customers, but we've gotten quite a lot in the last few weeks. So we need to think about how we activate them. And I think what Maja also said was that they quite quickly after they have signed up, they also need to be prompted with a test or an invite for an interview or whatever. So they get activated quite quick. And that's also what's super cool about working with a user panel, because you can segment those customers out. That's super easy and quite an automated process. Yeah,
and just shortly about what is next step for us at Team 2. And we actually did this similar survey as Emilie just mentioned before, and what we found was that our customers actually wanted to test even more. They found that we were never contacting them.
But that's nice.
Yeah, it's a win-win. So we definitely have to increase our testing and our invitation for doing user research. But to do that, we also need to engage our colleagues even more to use the panel. So and that is something that we found to be actually quite a huge risk in having a panel, is that if none of your colleagues or yourself are using it frequently, then the users are not contacted. And then what's the point of having a user panel? Like, so it's actually quite important case. And then lastly, we also looking into how can we reduce these inactive customers in our panel? Do they want to be part of it, or like what is going on here? And I know that Preeti is coming up with some new features around that, so that can help us. For example, is our messages landing in their spam filter or something? Yeah. Okay, so to sum up,
some key takeaways from today. So really think about what need do you have in your business, what need does the user panel have to serve, and be super explicit on that in order to make sure that you don't have to build a panel in order to build a panel and have it to have it. Then you just become an inactive pile of your lovely customers not being activated. Also, we really recommend don't do it alone. I think we both have we found that it's not because it's a tough job, but it's also an iterative process, and it's not something that just stands still. It continuously grows, and you need to be able to activate the customers, and you need to reinvent sometimes and all that. And that's quite a huge task, to be honest. It's also just fun to work with passionate colleagues around something that you all find really interesting. And also maintenance and planning is key, making sure that you have some milestones, you have some booked meetings in the calendar with the people that you're working with, so you continuously grow and can continuously also maintain the panel. And also, learnings from our own experiences, make some templates that ensures quality and coherence. What we found in YouSee, that when we launched we have done this user panel, it went rogue, and suddenly everybody was just testing, and that was also why we found that the whole process and the whole governance around the panel was so important, and also making sure that both really experienced colleagues and graduates and different kind of people with different experiences also feel confident in using the panel. That's also where the templates become super important. Yeah, as I said, this actually I already a bit touched upon, but be clear on who should have access to your panel. Also, because the panel can serve different needs. We thought when we initiated it, then we were also an agile organization. We are not that anymore. Not that agility and the strong customer focus is not in place anymore. It's the very core of everything we do. But think about who should work with it. You can always expand the internal user groups. That's also why we have formed teams in both TV2 and YouSee around our panels. And then I can't see what's in the box. What does it say? Make clear guidelines for rewards. Okay, yeah, that's because the camera is in front of the box. But yeah, I mean, we have talked a lot about this. I mean, we want to give rewards to our customers. Their feedback is really, really valuable. And we when we ask something of them, we also want to give them something back.
Yeah, but it's a bit a fun topic because we also tested, like I did some A/B test on sending out a test where there was no gift certificate and then sending out one with like a gift certificate. Difficult word. And I could actually see that in terms of how many people were converting on the test, there were no differences.
Like, oh, that's so interesting.
But again, it's not saying so you should not do the reward thing, I think, but it's interesting to figure out, okay, should there be a difference in terms of how long is the test, or what do you ask for the customers really? And I would just sum up one thing that I didn't mention before. We talked in the beginning about the size of your panel, and I think what's important, or what we found, was that so in TV2, our panel has grown quite big in short amount of time, but if we are not able to reach out to customers frequently, then the size of a panel can actually be too large in terms of we cannot get into contact with these customers. So I would definitely recommend better start small and then build up your panel and see how is our frequency around testing and so forth.
Yeah, there's also something about, I mean, that also depends when you're doing research, if it's quantitative or qualitative, what amount you and your company or the brand you work for defines as like the baseline. So in YouSee, we have, I think, depending on what competency or what role you have, it varies a lot what you define as the baseline. So we, for example, have that you can of a maximum send out to 250 in a test, and I know that's you guys in TV2. So that's also something you need to be able to discuss and think about when you set up a user panel. So what is actually the baseline that you work with in your company? Yeah, that was actually it. I went by fast, but we are more than happy to spare with you guys. So feel free to reach out. We really want to get a community going and share our knowledge. If any of you are interested.
Yeah, definitely.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for your talk. I think you touch upon some very interesting topics, and thank you for the kind words of Prilly as well. So we have a lot of questions coming in, and like one of the questions that is asked again and again is the GDPR compliance. And of course, I can say something about that. Of course, if you use Prilly, we are GDPR compliant. We have different levels of how we are compliant. We have a standard compliance that is just part of being a Prilly customer. Then we also have a custom GDPR that we can create together with you as a company. And then if you want to go into a whole IT security assessment, we can also provide you with that. So that's definitely from the technical point of view, from the panel, the platform point of view, we can support you in those things.
Yeah, I think that's great that you just mentioned that, and that's also one of the reasons why we choose Prilly is to really because it is like so many people are asking about it. It is really important to be aware of, because whenever you have personal data on other people, you need to be compliant towards GDPR, definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we have some questions coming in. We have one, I had one here that from Christian. He's asking, how much do you use the panel version versus other ways of recruiting users? So if you have a split, how would you say that is?
It's very, very different. Also, depending on in YouSee what team you're sitting in. So I'm working in commercial management. So my customer scenarios and the stuff that I need customer input for are relatively generic. So I use the customer panel a lot. Whereas some of my colleagues, they work in quite specified teams where they need very specific data on the customers. So they rarely work with the customer panel. And that's also something that we have, of course, been talking with you guys, Tina, about how we can enrich our panel more with more relevant, in-depth data. So it really depends on what products and services you work with and what team you work with. That's quite key. But yeah, as we said, we don't recommend just having the user panel as the one source to rule them all in terms of recruitment. You need to be open and aware about that. Sometimes working with the user panel might not be the best way to go. Sometimes when we need development for very completely new products, and we do also want to target new segments that are out of our customer base, and we go to an external partner. So there are many ways of going.
And again, like in TV2, our maturity towards recruiting customers is definitely not as far as you guys, so we are actually testing out our panel quite a lot in terms of how can we recruit from there. But again, it's definitely not the only source that we should use. It's just right now we are experimenting on what makes sense for us to use and how frequent and so forth.
Yeah, makes sense. Then we have a question from Lars Bo. How do you handle the risk of repeatedly drawing on the same user sample? This could create biases.
That's super great.
Again, without like being a commercial for because this is also like I really want to also imply that you can do user panels in many different ways. I mean, for us it's just easy to use Preely because exactly that question we can see we can actually filter people that has tested more than X amount of times, so we know that we're not reaching out to our super testers
all the time.
I think that's important to filter.
And that's probably also where like the size of the panel also comes into play. We have seen some really funny stories around recruiting through Facebook, and then we very often we have a super cool CX lab in YouSee where we can invite customers in, and sometimes we invite each other in the listening back room. And we have so often seen that it's when it's the same customers coming in, and it's hilarious because that's really when it becomes clear. Then also just like a huge platform like social media like Facebook also targets like the same people when you do those ads for recruiting. So but yeah, it's that's really where also Preely is really helpful, where like having a partner in a platform like Preely or somebody else, I mean, where you can manage these things. And that's also some of the things that you can have in your guidelines, making sure that when you have new colleagues coming in wanting to use the panel, that you can also say, hey, please bear in mind, use this, try to see what is it. Do you only want to have customers who haven't tested with you before? Or something that's also cool is that if you iterate on, let's say, a new flow on our website on mobile, for example, then we can actually target those customers when we have done a new iteration of the design, asking them, so we've done this now, what do you think that's better? And that's also quite cool.
Sounds great. I think this question goes a bit hand in hand with the other one. So what is your experiences regarding test fatigue, and how often can you send out a test and still avoid fatigue in the panel?
I mean, we have like a quarantine time of 2 weeks, and that has been up and down for us. We've landed on 2 weeks because We also asked actually that in the feedback when we asked the customers already in our panel last summer, and that was like the basic frame that they said, okay, but no later than that. We've also emphasized a lot on when we invite or ask customers if they want to be part of our panel, that it's completely up to them if they want to do a test or not. It's not because they've opted in that then you need to test when you get an invitation.
But definitely you can look at your panel in different levels. So you have the inactive users that will never test for you. Then you have users that test sometimes, and then you have a good baseline with frequent tested but not too much, and then you have your super users. So definitely you need to take into consideration how to not only tapping into one part of it, but I mean, I won't lie, but that is one of the big tasks around having a panel, is that all these questions, you cannot just not answer them or work with them, and I don't think it's the same for each company. So again, you need to have a colleague or two or several to sort of be able to discuss all these questions and also test it out. Like, don't be afraid to, like you say, the quarantine. Should we have it on? Should it be 2 weeks, or should it be longer? Should it be shorter? But again, we also have like great discussion with Preely around this, because you still are developing on your panel. So again, that's also maybe some features that will be available in the future, because it makes sense, right?
Yeah, definitely. So time is actually up, but I will actually go on that line and say, of course, like we, as also you pointed out, that we're developing on the platform as we go along, and we work very close together with our customers as well, and are very listening to what is going on in the different organizations that we have as part of our customer group, of course. So, and you too, I know I've had you into some workshops as well, to pick your brains of what you actually need in your daily work around the panels and so on. So a lot of those things are actually going to be implemented like next week and then the weeks after as well. So we're working very hard on having everything up and running with panels, and also all the new things, of course. But thank you so much. I can see there's a lot of questions in the QA section. I definitely believe that you should just reach out to Maja and Emilie. I know they are very happy to answer all of your questions. And then, of course, also please reach out to us if you have any questions about user panel in general, and of course, Preely, specifically Preely, because we are Preely. And then we'll definitely see if we can make something happen for you as well and support you in creating a panel. So thank you guys for a very great talk, and I know that I'll talk to you later on as well.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We of course really hope that it has inspired some of you to be able to jump into establishing a user panel. So
we'll
reach out if you have any questions.
Definitely.
That sounds great. And again, reach out to us if you have any questions. We'll make sure to send out the recording of this session and also your slides as well. And then of course, we'll include like some contact information for us as well, if you are very inspired by this talk and want to see it for yourself and see what we can do for you. Then I will say that we have a new meetup in April where Carolina Bohlmann from IKEA is joining us, and she'll talk about design ups. So that's going to be great as well. So I'm looking forward to that talk. And I think that was it. And it's actually 1 minute too. So we are keeping time, tracking the time as well. So that's awesome. But again, reach out to us if you have any questions, and reach out to Maja and Emilie if you didn't have your question answered during the talk. So I'll say thank you for now, and thank you for joining, and everybody have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.